Well, what's up guys? This is Daniel from Arms Family Homestead. As you can see, I'm out in the shop today, or this evening, tonight. It's almost dark outside. And we're gonna start processing Emily's deer. I've had a lot of people request to see how we process deer. I'm not gonna include the skinning and the boning out and all that. It's a little bit more gruesome than what I wanna put on YouTube right now, because that kind of stuff gets flagged and demonetized, and we don't wanna do all that. But I've got the deer that Emily shot a few days ago. I skinned him out and deboned everything except the two front shoulders. The two front shoulders are still in here. And everything else is deboned and on ice. And just got a nice cutting board set up, some bowls, a meat grinder. I'll tell you about what I use for a meat grinder, and a food saver. So I don't have a really nice fancy meat grinder, but what I do have is my wife's KitchenAid stand mixer and a meat grinder attachment. I bought this thing on Amazon. By the way, I'll leave links to this stuff in the description box down below, but this is a meat grinder. It also came with sausage stuffer, so if you wanted to make bratwurst or something like that, you just put the sausage stuffer on there and it'll make those for you. But this little thing, I think right now, is only about $32 on Amazon. It's probably not the best meat grinder. Obviously, if you're going to be processing a lot of animals, I would suggest getting like a 3/4 horsepower or 1 horsepower dedicated meat grinder. But I don't typically cut up all of our own deer because a lot of times it's not cold enough here. It's usually going to be 65, 70 degrees. So we end up just skinning it and then quartering it up and taking it to a processor, or just taking it to a processor whole. Now, if you're gonna take it to a processor, it will save you a lot of money if you'll go through the time and skin it and quarter it up, because they're gonna charge you a lot more money to do that part. This is just my way of doing things. You may do it a different way, but here's what I do. So we're gonna grind a lot of it up in the KitchenAid meat grinder, and then I don't use freezer paper. A lot of people will wrap it in plastic, put it in freezer paper, wrap that up, and then, but when you want to thaw it out, everything just kind of gets really bloody. You can't take that stuff on the road with you, put it in an ice chest or anything, because it'll get blood all in your ice chest. So I use a food saver. It's a vacuum sealer food saver. I've used this thing I've had this specific one for probably, I don't know, 7 years maybe. I use it a lot in the summertime for vegetables, and then in the fall we use it when we process deer and things. So this is an older model. I'll leave a link to a newer model. They've got a lot better features and work a lot better. I've been thinking about upgrading for a while. I just haven't done it. But that's the basic setup. A meat grinder, food saver, plastic bowls. I wish I had stainless steel. Don't have any stainless steel bowls right now. I will say this, if I'm gonna keep processing deer myself, I would like to upgrade and get like a stainless steel table and some stainless steel bowls and things, but it's not necessarily required. You can do it with plastic stuff. It's just a little harder to clean, and you just got to take a few extra steps to make sure everything's sanitary. So let's get started processing this deer. So when you're processing wild game, especially deer, you want to make sure you get as much of this sinew off as possible. The white layer here, it's also called silver skin sometimes. This is what makes your deer meat have that gamey taste. This and the fat, but especially that sinew it makes it really tough. It's hard to chew. So you really want to do a good job trying to trim as much of that stuff off as possible, because that's what's going to make your deer taste a lot better. So all this meat's still nice and cold, obviously. It just came out of the ice, but in order for me to run it through my meat grinder, this stuff needs to be about 1/2 to 3/4 frozen. The hard, firm meat goes through the meat grinder much easier than if it's cooled off. And I don't mean even to room temperature. If it's just cold to the touch, it will bind up in my meat grinder. So I just kind of lay it out on a cookie sheet and throw it in the freezer for a little while. And when it's nice and firm, it'll go through my meat grinder much easier. So while the meat's in the freezer, cooling off, getting ready to go get ground up, I'm gonna go ahead and take these little, I wouldn't even really call these steaks. They're like little bite-sized steaks, I guess. I take a lot of my chunks of meat and cut it into little chunks like this and dip it in egg, roll it in flour and fry it. It's not really a steak, but man is it ever good. So the first step is to seal the bottom of your bag. I really like these vacuum bags that come on a roll. You can just make your own size. I don't have a lot of these, but basically you just figure out what size you want, cut it, and then you made your own bag there. Probably bigger than what I needed. Sealed her up tight. Just throw it in the freezer and it's ready to go. That'll last a lot longer than just putting it in a Ziploc bag, or even, in my opinion, wrapping it in saran wrap and putting it in freezer paper. So let's get the rest of this sealed up. Alright, so a lot of our hamburger meat's about half frozen, pretty stiff. So we're going to go ahead and fire up the KitchenAid stand mixer and get some of this ground up into hamburger meat. So as you can see, that little KitchenAid meat grinder works great. If you've already got a KitchenAid stand mixer at your house, spend the 30 bucks on the meat grinder attachment. I think typically it's like $64, but I looked on Amazon today and I think it was 32 bucks. It's hard to beat. It does a great job, as long as, like I said, it's very important that you get all that silver skin and sinew, the connective tissue type stuff off the meat, because it will definitely bind this up. And if you don't get that meat almost frozen, just about half to 3/4 frozen, it takes a lot longer. But good clean meat and half frozen, you guys saw it shoots right through that KitchenAid mixer meat grinder perfectly. Let's get down to the good part, because when you talk about eating venison, deer, elk, wild game, it seems like it doesn't matter what it is, everyone thinks about those back straps. That's where it's at. Now you've also got, so on any animal, obviously you've got two back straps. Those two run down either sides of the back. What a lot of people, one thing a lot of people don't really say much about are these two inside tenderloins. That right there is the filet mignon of the deer. Those two come from inside. Let's see, how can I explain this? if you cut a deer open, you look inside the cavity of the chest, go down to the stomach, down around the hips, from the hips up into the back. Those are two, just like these are back straps, those are the inside back straps basically. So on the back strap, it's just like all the rest of the meat. You want to get as much of that silver skin off of there as possible and clean it up really nice, and then we'll butterfly steak it out and it's going to be delicious. So I'm basically just filleting this just like a fish. I'm going to roll it over. We're going to try to get as much of that silver skin off as possible. And if you cut too deep in the meat, you can always come back in here. Now that part right there, that's what's chewy. You can't eat that hardly. So here's our back strap all cleaned up, trimmed up, got all that silver skin off. Now, if you take your deer to the butcher and they say, do you want to butterfly the back strap? What they mean, I'll show you what a butterfly steak is, okay? So we're going to take probably about a 3/4 inch slice right here, and we're not going to go all the way down. Here, let's do it on this side so we got a flat side on the bottom. So basically you're going to come over here and you're going to slice about almost all the way through it, and then you'll come another 3/4 of an inch or so and cut it off. Then when you open that up, you have a butterfly steak. See why they call it that? There's what you had. Slice it open and you got a butterfly steak. So here we go, about 3/4 of an inch. We're going to go almost all the way through it, all the way through it, and then there's your butterfly steak. That right there is some good eating, folks. Well guys, I think this is where I'm gonna call it quits for the night. I've got probably 15 pounds of deer hamburger ground up and about 12 or 15 packages of those little steaks that I just absolutely love. So that's quite a few meals. I put my hamburger meat, I mean obviously this is not a 1 pound package of hamburger meat. I put them in big packages because my wife is not a huge fan of deer hamburger meat, but we do love it. My watch is talking to me. So my wife's not a huge fan of deer hamburger meat in a lot of things, but we do love it in things like chili. So we make huge pots of chili. So we'll mix, you know, several pounds of deer hamburger meat with beef and whatever else we got at the time. So pretty good spread, a lot of food right here. Guys, if you've never seen the little meat grinder on the KitchenAid mixer, check that out. I'll leave an Amazon link in the description box down below. For like 30 bucks, you can't beat it. Get you a vacuum sealer to vacuum seal all your food up. It'll last a long time in the freezer, and man, you're set. Good to go. Well guys, that's all I've got for today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's a little bit different, but it's been requested by so many people since we've harvested deer. They want to see how we process them and what we do. So I'm gonna get all this stuff thrown in the freezer. Guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Y'all have a great night, and as always, we'll see you on the next video.